So I've just watched with my dad the BBC Prime Ministerial debate between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer from Nottingham, and also there was audience participation. The moderator was Michelle Hussein. First kind of 15 minutes were frankly distracting because there was some sort of protest going on outside. Don't know which group. Michelle Hussein said it's part of our democracy, which is all very well, but when other people can't hear the answers, I think it's selfish. And to me, that's one of the problems with this green light for just, you can protest without responsibility. Other people have a right to hear the candidates. Um, some of the questions I thought were a bit vapid. They were kind of ad hominems. I mean, one question was about Starmer being controlled by strings, and it just looked like a personalised question, and also against Sunak rather than a policy question. And then one woman asked about, you're both men, what will you do for women? Well, it's ignoring the fact the last Tory leader was a woman, and it just, you know, it's a little bit more valid. I don't like those sort of ad hominem attacks. Like, I mean, what are they supposed to say? Sorry for being a man? It's stupid. That pitch is stupid, sort of making out like, and this is the problem I have actually with that. Yeah. Anyway, that's not here or there. I want to address a specific point in the debate. I'm not going to go through each of the questions raised, but there was one thing about welfare. Now it's a valid question. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been asked. I mean, topic. It's an important thing. It affects a lot of people. And the woman was basically, she was clearly using somewhat diplomatic language, but she was very much of the conservative view of they're a bunch of lazy dole scroungers. You could tell by the pitch of her question that's what she was getting at. And the next question, interestingly enough, so I suppose fair play to the BBC for balancing it out, was a disabled woman pointing out the exact opposite, and she specified it to Sunak, about punishing welfare policies. I want to talk about Sunak's attitude to this, and it's perhaps the main reason, the single main reason I will be voting Tory. Um, you know, Sunak's response was he wants a compassionate system. He'll always support that, but we need to have incentives. We need to basically, crack down harder on people. What I find really galling is the dishonesty that Sunak and Hunt and Co are coming out with. That there's as if to imply there isn't already a sanction culture in place. Um, and he was pointing out that there needs to be a stricter criteria for people who are eligible, the eligibility criteria. Now, I agree that if people are getting money from the state and they're fit to work, then there are obligations. But the problem I've got with the narrative that's been going on from the Conservatives is it is very stigmatizing because it's all based on how can we punish people, how can we penalize them, how can we make the sanction culture even harder. Um, and they're quite sneaky about the way they do it because they're not outright saying, they're not stupid enough to say, "Oh, we want to punish the lazy dole scroungers." They're not going to be that blunt about it. They'll say, "We want to help people back into work." But with this obsession with sanctions and this obsession with um, it really angers me, quite honestly. I think there is an empathy deficit there. You get someone like Laura Trott, and I don't want to sound like a broken record here because I've mentioned it a few times. Does tap into Tory thinking, um, who says, "Oh, the disabled could just work from home; they've got a duty to do so." Does she live in the real world? Does she understand what it's actually like if you're in chronic pain or you have a debilitating condition? Uh, Sunak's the same. I don't think Tories have any understanding of this. I don't think they actually can put themselves into people's shoes. Um, Now, I would like to see Starmer being a bit more hardline in his rebuttal. He sort of spoke about Sunak was talking about he hasn't went along with our welfare reform bills. This also bugs me. There's this kind of vague term of welfare reform. It doesn't talk about how that impacts people's lives. If you're disabled and there are many jobs that you can't do, and this is not to say that people can't work if they're disabled, but fact of the matter is it does create challenges for people. And when the Tories talk about welfare reform, they're really saying is we want to make life even harder for claimants. You know, let's just disregard the financial anxiety that they face. Let's just disregard the heavy sanction culture that's already in place in the DWP. Let's disregard the soul destroying um, work capability schemes, the workfare programs. Oh no, no, we need to make it harder. And I think there are Tory voters, like the first woman who asked the question, who are very ignorant about this. They don't really know what it's like. So, they'll take an extreme case that's been cited in the Daily Mail, like that Bulgarian gang that ripped off a lot of money from the welfare system, and they'll assume that's like the norm. Um, I would invite those people to try being in the shoes of a claimant and knowing what it is like to sign on. It's no picnic, and the vast majority of people who do it wouldn't want to do it because it is degrading. It is. I also think there is no leader's going to say this of a party, but I do think there are people in the DWP who are bullies. They like talking down to people. They have that little bit of power where they can sanction someone. This is something that is hardly ever discussed. The leader of the Labour Party, I think Starmer missed an opportunity there. He just kind of parroted some of the same lines, or we want to get people back into work and so on. Sure, that's all important. And I appreciate that he has to counter some of the Tory claims that, Labour's going to make people on welfare forever. But I would have liked to see Starmer pushing a little bit more on the case for compassion and how, it's just plain wrong to threaten disabled claimants with work capability assessments, that it's kind of the Stalinist system of prove that you're fit to work. And it's even when they have proven that, when they've shown notes from doctors, when they have shown that they're disabled, then they're still harassed. I think the DWP may well be sitting on a post office style scandal, with the way they threaten people. It's abhorrent. Um, One good thing about this is I think the public attitude's changed a little bit from 2010. I remember in 2010 when the Conservatives came to power, unfortunately, there was quite a lot of support for the Tories' divisive narrative about strivers versus scourgers. I think that's somewhat changed. Now, of course, there's going to be people in society, like the first woman who asked the question, if you see the debate, you'll know what I mean, who do believe that there's a lot of lazy people who, just want free money. Of course, the reality is not that simple. But I also think because of the cost of living crisis, because there are people who are working, they're actually doing a job and they still need to sign on. There's more empathy in the public. You certainly won't get that from the Conservative Party. And I think it's a bit of a cruel joke for Sunak to talk about he believes in a compassionate welfare system. He represents a party that has pushed people over the edge. I have no doubt that there have been suicides directly linked to the Tories' callous approach to this, i.e., sending people threatening letters, work capability assessments. The amount that is lost in the welfare system, i.e., from fraud or overpayments and so on, is significantly less than that which is lost in overseas tax havens. So, the Tories and throughout the debate, Sunak was talking about reforming welfare. Reforming welfare is the great magic cure to the economy, but it's scapegoating some of the most vulnerable people in society, and it's what the Tories have always done. I think fundamentally there is a callous side to Tory thinking. Um, Now it's not that Labour is blamed this. I think the Tories have the upper hand in some areas, like women's safe spaces, but with this issue, I'd like to see Starmer being more robust, and because Labour can't be entirely trusted on this on this either. It was New Labour that also used workfare and work capability assessments. All of this stuff didn't just begin with the Tories. So I'd like to see Starmer and the Labour Party being a lot more clear that they're going to be a little bit less callous about this. I mean, it's all very well saying that people are on welfare for life, but the reality is, I mean, Starmer said his approach to this was to reduce waiting lists to, to help out the labour market, but which is good. But I think he needs to be more vocal in addressing how he'll be different from the Tories in this regard. This vague thing that the Tories come out, welfare reform, what they're really saying is we're going to make life harder for claimants. We're going to scapegoat them more. We're going to introduce more punitive sanctions. And Sunak and Hunt talk about this as if it's a new thing, as if there aren't already sanctions in place. So I'm pleased the BBC included the woman who also, the disabled woman who asked that question. But anyway, that is probably the number one reason I won't vote Tory. The other thing is the Sledes. I do think there's a culture of one rule for them and another rule for everyone else. Michael Gove said that is the perception that people will have from this betting scandal. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's minor compared to Partygate, but it's just another example of Tory Sleaze. Um, Labour isn't innocent either, but it's the arrogance of power, one rule for them and another rule for everyone else. And all these threats about welfare sanctions, and I granted this is going back a bit, but MPs' expenses. I'm sure there were many Tory MPs implicated in that, so it's pretty damn hypocritical to talk about people cheating the system. Um, I'm not naive. I'm not saying that people should just get free money from the state without obligations. But what really angers me is the fact that the Conservative Party are so obsessed by punitive sanctions and basically punishing people for being unemployed or being particularly disabled unemployed. It's not a criminal offence. And if Sunak really believes in a compassionate welfare system, why is he and his chancellor pushing the sanctions culture so hard? I mean, the number of people who have been pushed over the edge by that is, uh, I don't know what the exact figure will be, but it's certainly far, far too many. And it's something that's hardly ever brought up, except in the pages of the Daily Mirror or the Guardian or the Independent. But it's not really brought up in debates. And final point, I don't know how much difference these debates really make. I do think in the British system they need to get some sort of timer or something. In France, they have a timer when the candidates debate, maybe a buzzer, because at several points tonight it was just messy. Sunak and Starmer were talking over each other. Michelle Hussein had to talk over them. It was just messy. Um, but yeah, I cannot vote Tory in good conscience, knowing what their approach is to this. Um, and that doesn't mean I'm overly enthusiastic about Labour. I would like Labour to be a lot more clear that they're going to take a more compassionate approach to this and not just penalise people. And also address the sanction culture in the DWP. The fact that claimants are being punished when they've done nothing wrong. Um, of course, people who cheat the system should be held to account, but that is not it is not the norm. It's not every claimant who does that. In fact, the majority don't. So yeah, I'd like to see a bit of a more compassionate approach because if someone's disabled, if someone is struggling with unemployment, that creates great anxiety. And the Tories' attitude is it's just punish them. It's actually abhorrent.